Northern Africa that has not submitted any names. Northern Africa does not have SESE-transmitted trypanosomiasis, but it has the non-SESE transmitted trypanosomiasis, which is also included in our mandate. So they need to do that. We also need Central African countries to again look at your two nominees and let us know whether you would like to update that. I will now hand over to the moderator for the session. But again, before I do so, I want to remind you of the questions that he raised yesterday at the end of the day, and the challenges that he posed that we need to address. I think it is very, very important that, again, we break the silos and look at this as one problem, not as a problem of animal trypanosomiasis, a problem of sassafras, and a problem of human trypanosomiasis. We look at it as one problem, because that is the way we are going to come up with innovative ways of mobilizing funding. So without wasting any more time, I now call upon Dr. Saini to take over.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We had one paper yesterday from Cameroon, and the gentleman could not connect. So I'm requesting Steve, if he's online, to please connect now. Steve from Cameroon. Steve, are you there?
Recording in progress.
Steve, while you're trying to connect, I think we can move to the first paper of the morning while Steve tries to connect. Vigliano, can we have the paper on the continental atlas?
Can we have the presentation at the and a bit less echo? Hello, hello. Okay. Good morning. This morning I am going to present the Continental Atlas of tsetse flies in Africa. This is an FAO initiative in the framework of the program against African trypanosomosis. I have been to ISCTRC conference for almost 20 years, and we have heard again and again that there is a need to update the tsetse distribution maps. And what you're about to see is our humble attempt to address this issue. It took us a very long time to develop what you're about to see. It took us 10 years. So it is still not as good as we would like it to be, but even to get to this point, it's been quite a challenge. Slide, please. Okay. Thank you. One important point is that today I will only present the tsetse distribution component of the atlas, but this is a broader initiative where we have also data on tsetse infection, animal trypanosomosis Nagana distribution, and Surra trypanosoma evanzai distribution. So what you're about to see is just a part of the initiative. You know better than me that the latest maps of tsetse in Africa were published in 1977, and the reference year is 1973, by Ford and Catondo. So what I am about to show you is what was the maps that we were trying to improve. Okay, so for those who have not seen the Ford and Catondo maps, this is what we are talking about. This is just one little bit in Southern Africa for the Fusca group, for the Morsitans group, and for the Palpalis group. Of course, there is no Palpalis group in this area of Africa. But this is the latest continental maps of tsetse we have, and this is what we wanted to improve. Slide, please. Slide, please. Okay, methodology. One important point is the atlas developed by FAO is only based on scientific publications. This is a very important point because you have heard during this conference what the countries are doing. What the countries are doing is what we call national atlases, and national atlases are based on any data collected in the country, published and non-published. But the FAO Atlas is only based on peer-reviewed scientific publications. So we look for publications, then we centralize in a repository, then we build a database, and then we generate the maps from the database. A slide. Okay, I will try to improvise a little bit because it's the... we have a database with 5 simple tables. One table is the sources of the atlas. The second table is the geographical information. The third table is the tsetse distribution data. Fourth table, animal trypanosomosis data. And the last table is tsetse infection data. So maybe we can skip this quickly because I think time is running out already. And let's jump into the results. We have reviewed approximately 700 publications only for the tsetse component. If we include animal trypanosomosis, we're talking about 1,400 publications, and that is why it took us a very long time to develop. we have found tsetse data for 34 countries, and we have mapped over 3,500 locations. For Burundi, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Somalia, we did not find even one publication in the 30 years we have analyzed. We have analyzed 1990, 2020, 31-year period. This is the Sorry, I go back. This is the summary table of how many papers we have identified for each country infested by tsetse fly. So you will see there is a great heterogeneity. There is one paper on Eswatini, and there is almost 100 papers for Kenya, for example. We generated map for 26 out of the 31 tsetse species and subspecies that are recognized. And for those 5 species, Glossina anningtoni, Nigrofusca hopkinsi, Schwezi, Severin, and Wanhufi, we did not find any data at all. So there is no map we can present. Is it possible to bring down the bar so that we can see? I confess I cannot recognize all the species just by looking at the map. So this is the summary of what we have done. So this is the map of tsetse flies in sub-Saharan Africa based on 30 years of scientific publications. You see there are big gaps. I would probably point out the one in the DRC, Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is at the heart of the tsetse distribution, where there is very limited information on tsetse distribution. In other areas, we have quite abundant information. So now we'll try to go quickly, because I put many maps, but probably we don't have the time. So, slide. This is the map of the Palpelis group, this is Morsitan's group, and this is Fusca group. And then, of course, species level maps. So this is the summary of the Palpelis group, and these are the 5 species of the Palpelis group we have mapped. And if you want to have a quick idea, Caligina, this is the results, Fascipis, this is the results, Pallicera. One important point, if you look at these maps, there are black dots and white dots. Black dots is detection of the species. White dots means there was a survey and the species was not found. Because it's very important to include in the maps absence of capture. Because it's a very different thing that an area has never been surveyed or an area has been surveyed and no data have been found. This is the same approach we promote in the national atlases, by the way. Pallicera, Palpelis, Palpelis as a species, and then I will not have the time to show you the subspecies maps, but we have subspecies maps in the atlas. It's a bit of a challenge sometimes to map subspecies, because it's not always clear how the authors came up with the subspecies determination, but for your reference, what we put on the map is what the authors said. So we don't make decisions from our end. If authors of a paper report Palpelis gambiensis, we report Palpelis gambiensis, okay? Palpelis palpelis is the other subspecies of this species. This is Glossina tachinoides. So I will go very quickly, again in the interest of time, Morsitan's group, 5 species, Ostenai, Longipalpis, Morsitans, Pallidipis, Swinertonai, and this is Fusca group. As I said, 5 species of this group, we didn't find any data, but for 5 plus 4, so 9 species of the Fusca group, we could develop some kind of map based on the available information. This is Glossina brevipolpis, Fresili, Fusca, Fuscipleuris, Longipennis, Medicorum, Nasci, Nigrofusca, Tabaniformis, and that's it. Okay? So these are the maps we generated, 10 years of work. That said, there are still a lot of limitations in what we have done. The first limitation is we only used published data. So, and not only published data, data published in peer-reviewed scientific publications. So if there is a meeting report, an ISCTRC proceeding paper, we did not use, okay? This was for two reasons. In the interest of time, because it took us already 10 years to do that. If we had included much more, it would have taken us 20 years. But also because peer-reviewed scientific publications are considered the highest standard of quality and accuracy in terms of reliability of the data. I've spoken about the geographical gaps, especially in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, but also in other countries. There is another gap. We stopped at 2020, so there is already publication 2021, 2022, 2023. We have not yet analyzed. And then, as I said, some data for limited data for certain rare species of the Fusca group. We are going to publish this very soon. We hope at the beginning of 2024. So in a few months, this work will be made available in the PATH Technical and Scientific Series, which is the series we published in collaboration with WHO, IAEA, and the African Union, IBAR. This project was funded initially by the Italian Development Cooperation, and now it is being finalized within the framework of the Combat project. This is the key things I wanted to say. If I have another minute, I may have a final message. Just 1 minute. One of the reasons why it took us so long to complete this work is because we don't believe this work is the priority. The priority is the national atlases that are being developed in the countries. So for us, it was more important to support Burkina Faso, Zimbabwe, Kenya, Sudan, Mali, to develop and publish their own atlases than to finish the FAO atlas. Now we are happy, we have finalized this one, but let's keep in mind that this atlas does not replace the national atlases. Those must be developed because that's where decision making is made. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Giuliano. Can I call on Paul Merigi to talk on repellents, please?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. My name's Paul Mireji. I'm a scientist. Yes, my name is Paul Mireji. I'm a scientist at Biotechnology Research Institute of Kenya Agricultural Research Organization, previously K3. The focus of my work here has been more on developing, expanding the toolbox for tsetse fly control. The focus on developing new attractants and repellents for tsetse flies. So it's not moving. Good. So our journey began with these two great gentlemen and the animal, the wildebeest. And in this particular journey previously, Hassan Ali and Saini actually made some groundbreaking discoveries of avoidance of the tsetse fly, of the avoidance of the bushback by tsetse flies. And in this study, the thing is it's not progressing. Hello? Excuse me. it's not moving. Actually, we actually established through a series of studies that the tsetse fly avoidance of the water back was actually associated with some very specific volatiles. They characterized the volatiles and established that actually some of the 4 key components in these volatiles that were important in avoidance behavior, and this actually constituted the very first formulation of the tsetse fly repellent. They did some field work and established that actually these repellents put together had an efficacy of repellents of up to 80% in reducing the feeding efficiency of tsetse flies, and ultimately formulated it into a very viable commercial product that could be used to repel tsetse flies, which has actually found wide application in tsetse in protection of livestock from tsetse flies in this region. So we do actually appreciate a great effort and a lot of work that was done by these 2 gentlemen that actually brought us to where we are. So our journey began here, where we thought that maybe we could come up with something better, getting a better repellent. And from the previous application, you find that there's one particular molecule that we refer to there as delta octalactone that was actually established to be one of the key important components in the repellent's composition. So we took this molecule and made it a little bit longer by adding 1 carbon molecule to something called delta nonalactone. We did some wind tunnel experiments, and in these wind tunnel experiments, we introduced the tsetse flies to this particular new molecule, compared it with the old molecule that we called delta octalactone. And then we also used the fermented cow urine as a proxy for the animal itself. So when you did this in a wind tunnel, we were pleasantly surprised to find that actually the new molecule was more repellent to Glossina mossitan and Glossina pallidipes in a wind tunnel experiment. And so the question was whether this could also persist in the field as well, because this is a laboratory experiment. And from here, we found that actually the molecule itself was actually about 25% more repellent in the field. And when we added the other components like methyl glycol, geranyl acetone, and heptanoic acid that had previously been identified by Saini, the repellents actually went down to 95% repellents of the tsetse flies. And so we did benchmarking work with the original molecule, with the original blend that Hassan Ali and Saini had wonderfully discovered. And we found that actually this new blend had a double or 100% more repellents than the original blend that had been designed by Saini and Hassan Ali. So we look at this and thought that maybe if we could find a way of taking it to the next level. And so we did this against pallidipes. That's the results have shown was effective against pallidipes. That's some work we did in southern part of Kenya and Shimba Hills. And we actually repeated this experiment for the interest of time against mossitans. We saw that in the field, in the laboratory. Submossitans, we did this aspect in Uganda, northern part of Uganda and central part of Uganda. Centralis, western Tanzania, Swinatonai in Serengeti, and we found that we were able to replicate the same results. For Swinatonai, Ausenai along the coast of Kenya, we found that it was actually suboptimally repellent, but a repellence of around 40% or so, 40-50%. And but then when we look at this work against Phascipes, unfortunately, we did not find any repellents of Phascipes. Neither did we see that in the original compound that were designed or formulated by Saini and Hassan Ali. So we moved to the next level, and we decided to test the efficacy of our product in terms of protection of the animal, mainly from from tsetse fly bites, not infection. So here we have our animal in the middle, tethered, and then we put in sticky panels around it to assess the population of tsetse flies around the animal with and without the repellent. So in this one here, we are looking at a comparison of the animal with and without the repellent. And as you can see, the animal on the right, we did not have the repellent. This is, again, a randomized block design. So these are just selection of some of the animals that we use, but more representative of what was happening. So as you can see here on the left animal is agitated. The one on the right with the repellent is quite relaxed and doesn't seem to be bothered and even seem to be having a good time. So here, again, we put in the sticky panels around to look at, to assess the number of flies that were coming around the animal with and without the presence of the repellent. And coming out of this, we found a few things. This work, again, in southern Kenya, where Glossina pallidipes and Glossina aucena are sympatric. So this one gave us an opportunity to look at how this one performs against the two species at the same time. So behaviorally, we could see that this seems to be going on. The other animals seem to be doing a little bit better. So here, we had our repellent put on the tail of the animal and another one on the neck of the animal, and wanted to see whether there could be a difference. So looking at this population of pallidipes, from what you can see, we had, again, a replication of what we had seen earlier, almost 95% repellence on pallidipes. And again, this is the data that I did mention more about auceni. So with auceni, again, we are looking at a repellence of about, slightly more than 50%, between 50 and 60%, which was quite interesting because we really don't have any known repellents against auceni. So this was something great. But at the same time, we also took our time to look at the feeding efficiency, just by looking at the flies that were caught in our sticky panels and how many had fed in relative terms. For auceni, we found that actually when we had both tail and neck combination, the efficiency was completely abolished. So we almost had 100% non-feeding of Glossina auceni, but it's a relative term. And then for pallidipes that have not seen it, we had absolutely zero, no feeding at all, 0%. So we came in and decided to push this technology a little bit forward. And we decided to use an encapsulation. We decided to encapsulate this in beta-cyclodextrin. This is a technology that has been used widely for delivery of medicine, drugs, etc., volatiles for slow release. So we put our molecule in beta-cyclodextrin, encapsulated them. We tried 4 different methods: kneading, freeze drying, heating, and core precipitation. Finally, kneading seemed to have worked much better. So we went ahead and assessed the release rates of the individual components. These are the components of our repellents: peptanoic acid, formaldehyde glycol, beta-nonylactone, geranyl and we found that actually the release rates were essentially similar to what we had established earlier on in the sachets. And so if you could remove this thing. Anyway, down here, we also look at the mean release rates in the field. We look at the mean release rates in the field, and when you look at the mean release rates in the field, we've actually found that the encapsulated one had slightly less release than 400 micron layout tubing, and the mean release rate again was pretty much inconsistent with what we had expected, slow release. So we went down in the field again and looked at, we came up with a better way of delivery of these microencapsulated products. So one of the things that we used, what we used down here on our left here is that we came up with a non-biodegradable, non-woven fabrics for the delivery system other than the sachet. And we looked at the performance in the field, with and without this aspect, and looking at different concentration or different densities or amounts of this encapsulated product. And we actually found, again, a similar pattern to what we had seen before. So effectively indicating that our encapsulation was, one, on the left side effective, and also had some semblance of field performance. So we use the same technology that we use in making integrated bed nets, IRSs, to, to, to incorporate our product on high density polymer fabrics, which we have here, and plus what we had there on the tail. And then we went out in the field and tried to assess. This is like a good trap that we put in our polymer, our fabric. And when you put in our fabric, this is with and without the treatment, basically, because we know that this one will also affect the visual attraction of the tsetse fly, so we took a control for that one. And when we went in again, we found that at different densities of this particular high-density polymer, we found that at a density of around 2.5 of our repellent, we got something very close to what we are repellents that we were getting with what we had with Sacha. Of course, slightly reduced, but quite similar. So this was a proof of concept that actually this can be used, and we look at it in terms of human protection, etc., and even on animals. So 2 minutes. Okay, good. Yeah, so we came in and tried to see how this one would perform now in the field, in the presence and absence of heat, sun. So 30 days exposure in the shade and in the sun. And we found that, that exposure in the sun seems to reduce actually the efficacy for 30 days in both cases. And so, but when in the shade lasts longer, but still some reduction. So a good idea that this could be used for that purpose. And then finally, we now came up with the idea of actually to add human protection, potentially, and looking at tourists, because the smell is, our repellent had the smell of a water bath-like. And so we came up with a way of masking this smell. So we got a masking agent, we put in, and then when we put the repellent, we went out there in the field again and assessed to see whether the masking had any effect, and sure enough, our masker was successful. Performance was similar to what we had seen before with and without the masking agent. So here we are, where we are now. We have done piloting. We are now going into scaling up. So we are dealing with issues of cost, the issue of affordability, and I think Malulu, my colleague here, will talk about that, availability, and so on. So this is the team. This has been quite a lot of work with all this team from Hassan Ali all the way to the group in the US and everyone else. And because this was the basic research was funded by mainly the Americans, the National Institute of Health, and finally the upscaling. Most of the work that I've shown later on was mainly supported by Innovate and ISCTRC, which we are most grateful to. And this is where we are. So effectively, we have effectively expanded this toolbox for tsetse control, and we are very happy for your opportunity to give this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Let's move to the next paper, Elimination of Gambiense in Senegal by Hassan. Is Hassan present?
This presentation is online.
Est-ce que vous m'entendez? Est-ce que vous m'entendez? Allô?
Please proceed.
Allô?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. So my presentation is, my slides are in English, but I will make the presentation in French. Bonjour à tous, je vais vous présenter l'élimination de l'Océan-Palpalistan en la zone des Niayes. Un rêve qui est devenu une réalité qui présenter les conséquences sur le plan épidémiologique. Donc, comme vous le savez, l'élevage, comme dans tous les pays africains, constitue une partie d'un secteur important dans le développement, mais également dans les économies nationales et au niveau de l'élevage. Maintenant, cet élevage est malheureusement confronté à des aléas pour la plupart des zones qui, comme dans la plupart des pays, constituent un frein au développement de l'élevage. Donc, c'est pourquoi, au niveau du Sénégal, en 2006, il a été créé ce qu'on appelle le Programme national de lutte contre la zoonose, la ISCTRC, qui, par décret, a été créé en 2006. Donc, ce programme, comme vous le voyez sur la carte qui est à gauche, regroupe différentes zones. Donc, il y a la zone est, ouest du moins, qui est à Garab, la zone des Niayes. Et puis, il y a une autre zone qui est au centre du Sénégal, la zone de Sissano, et la zone sud qui est la zone de la Casamance. Donc, quand on a fait l'évaluation de la surface infectée par la trypanosomose, cette surface est étendue sur 61 000 km. Donc, voici à gauche les surfaces qui sont dans la carte. Alors, le programme a décidé de mener la lutte de façon séquentielle, c'est-à-dire attaquer la zone de mer, puis la zone de Sissano, et puis en dernier lieu la zone de Casamance. Pour ce qui est de la zone de Niayes, l'objectif est d'éliminer la trypanosomose et le parasite pour qu'enfin passer des races à faible productivité vers des races à productivité élevée. Donc, ça c'est juste pour vous montrer des dates qui sont importantes parce que la lutte a commencé depuis les années 70 avec des campagnes d'insectisation, utilisant des insecticides qui ont permis pour un certain nombre d'années, et puis ça a repris dans les années 80 avec une autre campagne. Et cette fois-ci, on utilise l'insecticide et puis les écrans imprégnés. Ce qui a également contribué à un silence brésilien d'une dizaine d'années, avant de revoir des cas apparaître dans les années 1900, dans les années 90. Et à partir de là, donc, on s'est dit qu'il faut qu'on revoie notre politique, notre stratégie de lutte en adoptant, bien sûr, de nouvelles approches et de nouveaux outils. Donc, cette nouvelle approche a consisté à l'application de la phase conditionnelle, l'approche à phase conditionnelle. Cette approche à phase conditionnelle est divisée en plusieurs phases, donc 4 phases. La première phase à laquelle nous avons procédé, c'est d'avoir déjà l'engagement des acteurs et la formation du personnel. Donc, l'engagement des acteurs, c'est déjà au niveau très élevé, au niveau ministériel, avec les ministères de l'Agriculture, le ministère de l'Élevage et le ministère de l'Environnement, qui sont tous engagés dans cette campagne. L'autre chose, c'est qu'on a formé le personnel qui doit intervenir non seulement sur le terrain, mais également au niveau ISCTRC. Et également, nous avons, dans cette première phase, planifié les enquêtes de base et l'achat, procéder à l'achat d'équipements qui peuvent être utilisés sur le terrain. La seconde phase, qui est la phase 1, donc c'est la phase de collecte des données, que ce soit des données anthropologiques, parasitologiques, environnementales, puis socio-économiques, mais également pour voir un peu les données sur la dynamique des populations. Et ces enquêtes de base ont permis justement de développer la stratégie de lutte qui a pu montrer que la population de la Poudénienne est une population isolée. Donc, ça nous a permis d'adopter pour l'éradication et que, avec les différentes densités qu'on a dans la zone, de montrer là où on a besoin de suppression et là où on a besoin de tâcher de moins stérile. Alors, il semble suivre la phase 2, qui est la phase opérationnelle, durant laquelle nous avons établi donc un ISCTRC au niveau de Dakar. Pourquoi ne pas pour un ISCTRC en développement, on a jugé que justement il ne fallait pas prendre le risque de mettre en place un ISCTRC de l'opération dans une zone de lutte. Et la stratégie qu'on a adoptée, c'est de pouvoir importer du Burkina Faso et puis développer l'économie au niveau de fiche légale. Donc ça nous a permis un peu de faire, puisque on a eu justement la même espèce, parce que dans la Poudénienne, on a une seule espèce de mouche, et on a qui est maintenant par le et on a eu au Burkina Faso pour faire des études de compatibilité des charges et de compatibilité. Pour cela, il a fallu développer des stratégies de transport sur de longue distance, mais également pour la qualité. Et puis, quand tout cela a été mis en place, nous avons pu justement développer une étude pilote qui a permis de mettre en place d'autres paramètres futurs. Alors, nous avons également mis en place des méthodes pour pouvoir discriminer les méthodes moléculaires, pour pouvoir discriminer les mouches sauvages des mâles stériles. Alors, durant la dernière phase, qui est la phase opérationnelle, donc nous avons adopté une lutte séquentielle, ça veut dire que nous avons divisé notre point de vue en blocs, c'est-à-dire que nous allons passer d'un bloc à l'autre de façon séquentielle. Et pour cela, au niveau de chaque bloc, nous avons adopté la stratégie du rolling carpet pour pouvoir passer la suppression vers la phase de l'éradication. Toujours dans cette phase opérationnelle, en termes d'utilisation du terme utilisé, nous avons déployé plus de 3000 pièges imprégnés de bêta-métrie. Nous avons procédé également à l'élagage des sites favorables, mais également nous avons procédé au traitement d'animaux insectes. par ces coopératives forêts. Avant, et pour les zones qui sont des zones qu'on appelle les spots, nous avons procédé à des traitements par zone. Et après ces applications insecticides, etc., nous avons procédé, quand on a eu une réduction très significative des populations de mouches, nous avons procédé à des lâchers de mâles stériles. Et au niveau de la zone des Niayes, nous avons lâché par deux méthodes. D'abord, la méthode aérienne et également une méthode par des lâchers au sol. Pour la méthode aérienne, nous avons lâché plus de 7 millions de mouches. Également, pour la méthode de lâcher au sol, nous avons lâché plus de 3 millions de mouches. Par rapport à l'évolution des coopératives, c'est différent de le cas que les blocs ont été divisés en zones de lâcher, c'est-à-dire des lignes de lâcher au niveau desquelles on passe pour les bouches. Donc, juste pour vous montrer l'évolution qu'on a eue dans les lâchers, donc nous sommes passés d'une superficie de 1000 km² à une superficie de 225 km². Et puis, actuellement, nous travaillons sur une superficie qui est inférieure à 50 km². Et comme information, nous avons arrêté les lâchers aériens en fin 2022. Et puis, actuellement, nous utilisons des lâchers au sol. En termes de suivi sur le terrain, les points en bleu que vous voyez sur la carte du jaune montrent les niveaux de suivi direct de sentinelle. Donc, c'est plus de 330 pièges qui sont publiés, soit tous les 15 jours ou bien tous les mois. Et en plus de ça, nous avons déployé des pièges mobiles sur des pièges mobiles, c'est-à-dire que de temps en temps, on déploie des pièges au niveau de zones favorables pour pouvoir le bien au niveau de zones favorables pour pouvoir capturer, voir s'il y a également des femelles sauvages. Alors, en termes de résultats sur le plan entomologique, donc aujourd'hui, on ne capture plus de mouches dans le bloc 1. Depuis le bloc 1, c'est le bloc de Gaillard et au nord. Donc, dans le bloc 1, on n'a pas capturé de mouches depuis 2012. Dans le bloc 2, qui est en vert, donc le butin du route et sédicotable, nous n'avons pas capturé une mouche depuis 2022 et à famille sédicotable depuis 2017. Dans le bloc 3, qui comprend la sauce de caisse et le pactoral, nous n'avons pas capturé de mouche depuis 2021. Sur le plan sérologique, donc, il y a le suivi qui est fait sur les animaux, parce que nous avons des animaux sentinelles au niveau des zones. Au niveau du bloc 1, on n'a pas la prévalence de la maladie est passée de 19% en 2009 à 0% entre 2017 et 2022. Donc, cela, c'est des suivis annuels qui sont faits sur les troupeaux sentinelles. Au niveau du bloc 2, donc, on est passé d'une prévalence de 93% en 2010 à 0% en 2020. Et comme vous pouvez le voir sur les graphes qui sont autorisés ici, on a une diminution continue de la prévalence. Sur le plan parasitologique, donc, nous suivons également la parasitologie en utilisant deux méthodes. le FICOT et puis la PSN. Donc, comme vous le voyez ici, donc, nous n'avons pas eu d'éléments positifs depuis 2020. Donc, sur le plan des conséquences de l'élimination, ce qui se passe, c'est qu'actuellement, dans la zone des Niayes, nous avons un remplacement progressif des animaux qui sont passés maintenant d'animaux à faible productivité vers des animaux à haute productivité. Donc l'élimination de la mouche au niveau de cette zone a permis au gouvernement depuis 2017 d'introduire plus de 5000 animaux au potentiel de production. Ça, c'est juste les animaux qui sont injectés par le gouvernement. Mais il y a l'installation de privés qui se fait de plus en plus dans la zone. Et selon la direction de l'élevage, on a une augmentation de la production de lait de plus de 14 millions de litres. Donc, je n'ai pas terminé sans autant vous dire les étapes qui vont suivre. Donc, les étapes qui vont suivre, c'est qu'en 2024, on va confirmer l'éradication. Comme vous le savez, on a déjà fait une déclaration politique d'éradication. Et en 2014, début 2014, 2024, nous allons faire la confirmation par une déclaration technique.
Thank you.
Autre chose,
Please wind
on est en
down.
train socio-économique au niveau de la zone des Niayes pour montrer l'impact économique de l'élimination. Et on est en train également d'attaquer la prochaine phase, qui est la phase du Sine-Saloum, la zone 5, et que pour cette zone déjà, nous avons commencé à collecter des données de base, et puis nous allons bientôt réfléchir sur une stratégie, et puis également former la formation déjà a commencé pour les agents de terre qui doivent intervenir. Merci de votre attention.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much for the success story in Senegal.
Merci.
So, mapping of progressive pathway, PACOMA. Is he present? Oh, yeah.
Ok. Bonjour à tous.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the opportunity given to present our work on the mapping about the evolution of the control, the mapping the progressive control pathway for African animal trypanosomes in Burkina Faso. So I'm going to make my presentation in English. So Burkina Faso is the beneficiary of the trypanosomosis serious constraint on socio-economic development in sub-Saharan. So in 2013, the goal were not reached, and we reduced the density of the tsetse fly and the prevalence of this disease. So the country is now beneficiary of the help of many institutions. We have FAO, which the contribution helped us to implement and also to control tsetse flies and trypanosomosis. However, since in 2013, technical and financial support from the FAO has made it possible to develop national tsetse, and we have also the support of the European Union through this project Combat. We are going to improve and to adjust this control. We are going also to have another new approach. So the development of this progress, it is very important to define this strategy. And our goal, global objective, is also to define a strategy, and specifically in the first stage, we have also to adjust the strategy and to determine the evolution of the program to control the fly. So which method we are going to use? First of all, we have also to collect data, and the data we had, they are grouping all the data from all the institutions of research. So, and also the data from PATEC project from 2013, and also post-project data from 2013 to 2019. When we see the context in the country, we are also some areas where it is very difficult to move. So the zones which are in green, seeing the national situation, we had also to train the staff, so now they can collect different information. The training was about the collection of data, the use of different tools for the collection of data on the ground. Now for the updating, so the staff and the technician, we have more than 515 in 39 departments. These departments are departments where we didn't have also information, so we had also to update every system. So we had also to capture 555 and 3,371 animal samples were also now organized. All data were organized in a depository. So data on the sickness or data on the tsetse flies. So we have also database on these files. File with the database and data we try to improve them. So these raw data on TR, all the the control to reach the elimination of TT flyers. Now the raw data, the average from the 5 years, the beginning of the date, and these data were also organized according to the different species of animals. For the entomology, so we have the repository, we organize the data, we have the data base and the raw data about the control, where we have now the absence of tsetse flyers. So the database, we have different strategies for controlling the disease. We have also different strategies and the database about the entry. We have also the average information in 5 years, the beginning and also the last date. Now to have also a map. We have the data collected during these control activities. We have also control activities. We have also epidemiological control. We had also to define different stages. The first stage of the PCP is the first step to identify the risk. So the preliminary step where we don't have enough information on the TAH, the presence of glycine, where we have information. We have also to take the sampling, where also the prevalence is 0. The other last stage, we have information about the trypanosomes and also the prevalence, but no activity of control. We have also activity where now we have some activities, but we don't have a significance reduction. But the more evolved stage, we have activities which started where we can see also a decrease. We have also the interruption of activities and also some activities which are still going on. The stage 4 is now the stage of elimination of transmission. Now the result before the activities of PATEC, 70 we didn't have activity, and we have also 24. At that time, the country was somehow advanced on the collection of information. In 2013, we found that the whole country were at different level. So we have the preliminary stage where we have also 62% where we don't have enough information, and 18 where we have also information about on TAH and the glycine. And we have 6% where we have also some intervention. And these intervention are done by the farmers, and the decrease is not much. We have also 13% of the country where we are still reducing, and we have 42 impregnated targets, and many animals were also treated. So this zone is at the level 3, where we have also some activity of elimination. At the end of the project in 2023, what we found, we still have some areas where we don't have enough information. 52% of the country, we don't have enough information about the presence of the disease or maybe the vector. 36, we have some information concerning the presence of TAH and the glycine. We still have some activities ongoing. 11% of activities where we are still treating animals. We have also some initiative by the community themselves. Now this is the map that we have. This is the map where we summarize our activities. Now, what we can conclude. What we can conclude. In Burkina Faso, country was at stage 1 of the PCP, a large part of which was not advanced. With the advent of the PATEC project, the intervention zone moved to stage 3, and the activities also helped some zones to move from stage 1, which was not advanced, to the more advanced stage. 10 years after the end of the project, the lack of intervention and control has tipped the intervention zone from stage 3 to stage 2. To engage an effective fight against tsetse flies for eradication, it is important to be sure of being able to ensure the regular mobilization of resources. Countries also need to provide the control institution with the minimum resources they need to ensure now these activities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would like to request our speakers to please spend less time on methodology so we can move a bit faster. We are running behind time. Can I call on Bahin? Is Bahin present here or is he coming on Zoom? He's not there? Okay, so we move to SATE. Integration of TNT control methods, perspective from livestock.
Go to slide 1. Good morning once again. Slide 1, please. He's starting from the recommendations. Okay, I am going to present the work that we have done in Lamu County. Lamu County is a county in the coastal region of Kenya, this region where we are now. And the title is Integration of Fly and Trypanosomiasis Control Methods from Livestock Farmers' Perspective. I've given a list of all those whom we did the work with. A team from University of Nairobi and also from Kentech. Next. Next slide, please. Oh. Okay, on the introduction part, what we are saying here is that integration of fly and trypanosomiasis control methods, using different methods all together to control the fly and the disease, is the most feasible way of us attaining eradication, or rather control of the animal disease and also the HAT. However, little focus is directed towards understanding the drivers. What we mean here is the factors that may be influencing how farmers make decisions on which methods to use or which methods to combine together in the control of the fly and the disease. Following that now, the objective of our study was to assess the factors that are influencing farmers' choice and combination of different and trypanosomiasis control methods. We have been promoting a number of methods to control the vector, including use of insecticide-treated targets, use of insecticide-treated cattle, and even treatment. But when you assess, when you look at the areas where we have promoted this, the uptake is not 100%. So we remain asking ourselves, what could be the underlying factors that make this uptake not to be 100%? We identified Lamu County because that is one of the counties where the government of Kenya has been implementing. It is one of the counties where we are implementing SESE and trypanosomiasis control. It is also one of the counties where, through PATEC, we had piloted control of the disease and the vector. We sampled a total of 536 households, and we administered questionnaires to collect data on socioeconomics of these households, together with the control methods that these households are using. After developing the questionnaire, we trained our enumerators. That was one of the training sessions. And this is one of the photos where they were now set to go and collect the data in the field. This is the study site you can see. We are here at the coast, that is Lamu County. And this is Pate Island, plus part of the mainland in Lamu, and also Amu Island itself. That formed the study area. I've talked about that. The method that we used was multivariate profit model, which basically models how farmers can make their choice from a set of control methods that were available for us. And for the purposes of this study, we categorized a number of control methods that we are promoting. One of them, insecticide-treated livestock, which contains issues of dipping, spraying, and application of pour-on. The second category that farmers were choosing from is those group of farmers who basically used only treatment. They were never spraying, they were never dipping. And then another one is the use of trypanocidal drugs. And this is what is now explained in this slide, the three different categories from which the were choosing their control methods. A display of the methods, and I move straight to the first set of results. So after we had collected data from all the 536 households, we realized that 208 households were non-users of these methods. Only 46 were exclusively using insecticide-treated livestock. We said livestock because we have categorized those who were spraying both cattle, goat, sheep, and donkeys. 37 of the households basically grazed their animals in the fields where insecticide-treated targets were deployed, but they did not report to us that they sprayed, neither did they use boron, neither did they treat during the year under consideration. 71 households used the treatment method. They never applied the other methods, but when the animals fell sick, they treated using trypanocidal drugs. 44 households combined the two. They were spraying, rather they were using insecticide-treated livestock, and also were accessible to the fields where, or the thickets where we had deployed the targets in Pate Island. 130 happened to have access to all those technologies. They were spraying their animals or dipping them. They were accessible to the insecticide-treated target deployed in the thickets where they were grazing, and they also used trypanocidal drugs to treat the animals in the incidences where they fell sick. It's not moving now. Take me to the next slide, please. So these ones were our results. From the findings, you can see that the sex of the household head was a major determinant of those who used insecticide-treated livestock and insecticide-treated targets. What we are saying here is households that were headed by males tended to have combined insecticide-treated livestock and insecticide-treated targets. Size of the household, households that had more members tended to use less of this combination of insecticide-treated livestock and insecticide-treated targets. And this is a finding that is surprising, because we would expect that a household having more members would be more likely to use these technologies. The other finding is on age. You can see that the older the household had, the more the household, that household was adopting use of both insecticide-treated targets and trypanocidal drugs. In other words, it was a combination of all the three methods. All households which were led by older people used a combination of all the three methods. On occupation of households, that's another place we are seeing significance there. What it means here is that the question was whether agriculture is the main occupation of the household. Now, it is saying that those households which had agriculture as their main occupation, they reported that insecticide-treated targets combined with trypanocidal drugs were used much less compared to those that did not have agriculture as their priority occupation. That is also a surprising finding. Households which had more of farm income than others, it is indicated from the findings here that they also combined all the control methods that we considered in this study. This is consistent with other findings whereby it has been found that when a household has more income from elsewhere apart from farming itself, they are able to afford some of these technologies which we use for the control. Lastly, we can observe significance on the line of the question we asked about whether the technology was available, and also on the question of ease of use of that technology. You can see that on availability of the technology, households that saw the technology as readily available for them, it is the insecticide-treated targets that they saw as available and they adopted more of it. This can be attributed to the fact that Kentech, in collaboration with the government, county government of Lamu, had deployed targets within reach, so they observed this and found it to be accessible. That is why they adopted it. Adoption is just by having your livestock taken to the fields where the targets have been deployed and the farmers feel that they are protected. I'm just talking about the last one. Effectiveness, the reason follows. Conclusion, I've already explained the conclusions in the slide with the findings. What we give as recommendations is that we need to design farmer outreach programs that consider key household characteristics which may be found to be influencing the way they make decisions on whether to apply technologies singly or whether to apply them in a combination of either 2 or 3. And that is the end of my presentation. I wish to acknowledge those who supported this work. It was supported by University of Nairobi. It was supported by National Research Fund, NRF of Kenya, and also Kentech. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Seth. We move to the next presentation from Guinea on Sessi in mangrove forests by Kaga Badono.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you.
Nous avons plusieurs fois dit ici que
Many times
compte doit contribuer à la réduction de la transmission de virus. C'est dans ce contexte ici
This is in the context. We want to improve control technique against CC. And we thought that we should set up a target model named crossed target. In Guinea, we have a specific zone of mangrove zones with the introduction of CC control. We come to a reduced number of cases due to glacier density. With time, we noticed that we have a stabilization of the density in that particular biotope. How to explain it? We try, we have some assumption. The first, that phenomena, is it linked to a problem of coverage due to the complexity of zone? Secondly, is it linked to the ecology of mangrove flies, which we don't know yet?
Pour la troisième, est-ce que cela pourrait être lié à l'efficacité du matériel que nous avons utilisé, qui est l'écran réduit? Pour ce faire, nous avons mis en place un modèle tridimensionnel qui réunit deux premiers écrans utilisés, qui est l'écran réduit que nous avons rassemblé. Et nous avons donc essayé de l'évaluer.
To do the evaluation. The objective here is to evaluate the cross target we used against the reduced target. The second objective, improve control techniques, CC control in that region. So we have to bring an improvement in the elimination of the transmission of disease by 2030. So we did some experiments. The first was done outside the control zone. So we compare 3 to 4 models. A model of a reduced target, cross target, and biconic traps, and pyramidal traps. Here, targets were covered with adhesive to stop flies, a number of them. And since we know that traps can return the flies, we used 4 different biotopes according to the control zone. The Chenai, the Fossade, and the forest calorie. This zone is influenced by the matches. After the one realized in Bofa, following the result obtained, we realized a second one in the breaker zone. In the second experiment, slides. In the second experiment, it is in a context of control, CC control. For this, we identify two canals. In the first canal, we deploy 32 reduced targets. In the other one, we deploy 22 cross targets. We proceed to evaluation following entomological survey after 1 year, after 3 months and 1 year. The result we obtained, we notice capture very high by cross target and for the reduced target, we are at the limit of this capture. That's why we resume. In the second case, we notice that the captures by cross target were more abundant regarding the reduced target. In the CC control area, deployment by different targets, we can observe that where in the part where cross targets were deployed, there was a reduction of 60% of Glossina against we have reduced target at 12%. We also assess the resistance of this material on the field, and we noticed that almost 90% of normal targets were sprayed with, but there were many abnormality with reduced target. Taking into account biotopes, we notice because we use the various biotopes, the crossed target is more functional. In the canal, where we always observe more captures of flies. We all then said cross target is more efficient for Glossina palpabilis. And so, in the mangrove zone, than in the reduced trappers, reduced targets could be used to support in the canals, because that's where we found more capture. It's more easier in the deployment because in terms of staff for reduced targets, we need more people. It's easier, more efficient after the eliminations phase in the zone. Anti-CC control, the method is more efficient. To conclude, To conclude, I want to thank technical partners and financial techniques which made the work easier for us.
Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Nous passons à l'autre présentation. Stanley n'est pas là. Nous poursuivons la présentation. Nous passons.
The next one, Rungua, trypanosome-induced metabolites as potent attractants for ADPs.
How do I use this one? Oh. I copied it too. You are not seeing it. Music, 4.19. You'll assist me if I, oh yeah, it's this one. Yes. So you're saying this one, I just pressed this one? Oh, this one. The red one. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Rungua Chiro. Rungua. I'll be presenting my part of my master's work, which I'm conducting.
De maîtrise conduite à l'ICP par Marie.
This morning I'll be presenting on the trypanosome-induced chemicals, trypanosome-induced metabolites as potent attractants for Glossina pallidipes. Slide. Now for the introduction, I will not go much to the important things which have been mentioned by my friends about the trypanosome being very, very important and the vector control. But I would like to move on to the next slide, which is talking about the trypanosome-induced metabolites. Now I would like to, as you can see here, trypanosome-induced metabolites. What are they? This is what I want to actually make you know, that the trypanosome-induced metabolites, these are the metabolites which are found in the host animal as a result of infection by trypanosomes. They are expressed in the body of the host animal, and they are released in various products like urine and breath, but in this work we use the urine. Now if you can see the diagram here, there are some metabolites which are found between in the infected animal urine, and they are lacking in the one that is healthy. Then there are also those metabolites which are found in the infected animal. If you look at this diagram here, there's chemicals like metabolites like picresol, ethyl. If you compare to the other diagram below, they are expressed but in lower quantities or lower levels. But in the infected animal, I'm not able to, yes, like this one here, the ionons, these are metabolites which are found in the infected animal, but you cannot find them when the animal is healthy. So these trypanosome-induced metabolites have been shown to be very important animal African trypanosomiasis biomarkers, as described by previous research work by Getahun et al., who happens to be my supervisor. Now, these metabolites, being important animal African trypanosomic biomarkers, could be responsible for maybe attracting or the flies. What role do they have apart from being biomarkers? So this research work was concerned about these metabolites. Will they be having any role in attracting tester flies? And if they have that role, how can they be dispensed in the field? Next slide. So in this slide, the trypanosome-induced metabolites are powerful alternative tool for animal trypanosomiasis. So an understanding of these host metabolites on a tester fly behavior can be explored for development of new tester control strategies. Now, to exploit these trypanosome-induced metabolites, we researched on the urine of T. congolensis infected cow versus the urine of a healthy cow. This work was done both in the laboratory and in the field. Next slide. Now in the laboratory, we tested the urine of trypanosome infected cow, and this one was conducted at the CIPE laboratories in Nairobi, Kenya. And here, we wanted to test whether there is any, the response of the urine in a laboratory bioassay, so that if there's any, then we can take it to the field. And the field bioassays were conducted in Shimba Hills, Kwale County, Kenya. Most have already mentioned about Shimba Hills and have not shown it. Next slide. So the methodology, I've shown the bioassay. This is the bioassay whereby we were using a perspex glass which was having stick material inside, and the flies were released inside. And here we used the completely randomized design so that the flies will have equal choice of visiting the two test compounds. That is the urine, which is infected, and the healthy one, to see how they attract. Then in the field, we use the biconical traps. This is a biconical trap, so also a biconical trap. This is the field studies. And in the field, we tested the urine samples, both the infected and the healthy one. And in that first phase of using the urine, we had to use a control, which was unbaited trap. Now the dispensing of these metabolites in the field was done using dry formulation, this one here, and liquid formulation, that one. I'll show them in the next slide. The difference between the two formulation dispenser. Next slide. That is how the dispensing was done. This is the dry formulation dispenser, and this is the liquid formulation dispenser. Maybe if I can say something about these dispensers. Why dry formulation and why liquid formulation? The dry formulation dispenser was actually made by getting nanobeads, which were soaked in the test compound, and then when they were dry, they were stashed in these Tygon tubes. These are Tygon tubes. You stash them and then use them to trap or to put it on the trap for them to serve as baits. Then the second one, which is the liquid, it is just liquid formulation because the test compound was put in a 4 milliliter glass vial with a cotton roll, dental cotton roll, which absorbed the test chemical and released it into the, it was used to release the test compounds. Next slide. Now the results of this, the results of the lab bioassay, you can see that the urine from the infected cow attracted more flies than the healthy one. Next. In the laboratory, the urine attracted more flies, but it was just significant compared to the control and not significant compared to the health cow urine. I can go on to explain these results because in the field, we know that attraction of tsetse fly to traps or targets is by visual and also olfactory cues. So if you look at the health cow urine compared with the control, which was unbaited trap, there is no significant difference. But the same, just go back one slide. Yes, if you look at the comparison of the infected cow urine and the control, there is a significant difference. And that is because the control is a trap which also can catch flies because it has the visual aspect of the flies which they use if they get to the traps. Next slide. No, this slide we had to use the modified orders because we had used cow urine, went to the field. But after that, we went to the modified orders, the ones that I was showing, the ones which are induced and the ones which are unmasked. The unmasked chemicals, as I said, they are those ones which are expressed in higher levels when the animal is infected, but in lower levels when the animal is healthy. So I went to the field and did some trapping to see how they perform. Looking at the, sorry, excuse me. One? But yes, so the next slide we did using the semi-chemicals, the individual ones, and you can see that 3 of them attracted more flies. Then we compared it with the 1-octane-3-ol, which is a positive control, and there was no one which performed better than that. So we had to prepare semi-chemical blends. Next slide. So when we produce semi-chemical blends, then the semi-chemical blends were made using the induced and unmasked semi-chemicals. So one blend was having both induced and unmasked. Second one was having unmasked alone, and the third one induced. And the result, as shown, is that the blends performed better compared to negative control, which was an unabated trap. But more importantly here, the blends, there's one blend which performed better than the positive control trap. The last slide. Next. That one shows the comparison with the dispensers, and there was no significant difference between the two dispensers. However, the Tygon was considered more effective because it was loaded only once, while the liquid one you had to replenish. Next. Now, for the discussion, if you look at all the results on the urine and the blends, there's a potential that the attraction is because of the induced and unmasked chemicals which are present in that urine. Next. Now, so the conclusions is that the urine has got induced and unmasked chemicals which are responsible for the increased attraction. And the dry formulation is the most economical because of single loading. The recommendations is that the urine can be exploited with its semi-chemicals, the derived ones, for them to be used for attractants to set flies. And then there's need to exploit the use of dry formulation as a chemical dispensers for semi-chemicals due to loading of treatments compared to liquid formulation. Next. Thank you for your attention. Acknowledge the CP.
Thank you so much. Stella is online, so we have to go back, please. Stella, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
I have also shared the screen. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Stella, and I'll take you through this presentation, which forms my PhD thesis that I am currently finalizing at the University of Twente, the Netherlands. And it's the spatial and temporal insight for targeted control. So, everyone has said is that social flies are the main vectors of animal trypanosomiasis in the region, and it remains to be a significant obstacle, a health obstacle to both humans and livestock. One of the promising control strategy is to reduce cessation numbers to limit disease transmission, and luckily cessation control methods are well known, but other than the lack of funds, one of the reasons why cessation control are not cost effectively implemented is lack of precise and reliable information on their habitat distribution and abundance. And this is what my PhD thesis has been about, with an overall objective of using a series of readily available satellite data together with in situ cessation data and advanced modeling techniques to first identify the environmental drivers driving cessation distribution, as well as their habitats, and then use this information to predict habitats and habitats beyond monitored region. My main study area was Shimba Hills in Kwale County, but some of the research we also did it in other regions in Kenya and Rwanda. So for Shimba Hill, we started, the first objective was to identify the environmental drivers of the Tenero and non-Tenero Leucina pallidipes and predict their suitable habitat. Then for the models that we predicted for the adult flies, that is the non-Tenero Leucina pallidipes, we assessed the transferability to these three locations, that is Nguruma, Ruma, and Akagera. Additionally, in Shimba Hills, we also assessed the environmental and weather drivers that explain the temporal abundance of Sese dynamics. And lastly, we used limited geographic data, that is only data from Shimba Hills, Burkuman, and Ruma, to evaluate the feasibility of using machine learning models to predict Sese abundance for the whole of Kenya. I will take you through each of the objectives, only highlighting the key findings that we found. Some of these papers are published and I have shared links for them, and others are under review. So for the Tenero and non-Tenero Sese habitat, we found that the Sese Tenero habitats were mostly concentrated inside the Shimba Hill Reserve, but also for the adult flies, they slightly expanded from this locality. For the young adult, that is the 10-year-old flies, cropland and woodlands were the most important factors in both seasons, but also in the wet season. The maximum land surface temperature as well as silt content was also important. For the adult flies, the most important factors were mostly croplands with a negative relationship, while the woodlands positively correlated with these habitats in the dry season, but the relationship in the wet season was negative. For the model transferability, basically what we did is we trained the model, the models that we had trained in Shimba Hills for the non-Tenero flights. We extracted similar environmental variables for the 3 study sites and applied models there. As you can see, these are the results that we found, and then we had a set of in-situ data for each of the sites collected from ISCTRC and other, like for Akagera, from published data. And we did 2 things to check the accuracy of this transferred model. And one of the things that we did is we calculated F1 score values for the transferred models. And these F1 values, they were below the values that we found from the Shimba Hills model, that is the dotted line. But relatively, the models were okay. They were not, the transfer was not that very good, but it was relatively okay with F1 score values of above 0.6. And to also further scrutinize this transfer of the models and their reliability, we also developed the site-specific models. And we saw that these are the brown bars. We saw that the F1 score values for the location-based developed models was higher than the transferred models. But you can only develop a site-specific model if you have data. But in the case that there is no data available, it's promising also to transfer the model to some extent. And what we found is that what really mattered with the reliability and accuracy of this transfer is how similar the environmental conditions from where the model was trained were to where they were being transferred. For instance, Nguruman was the most dissimilar site, and as you can see, it had the poorest transferability also visually, where the models under-predicted habitats in the dry season and the over-predicted habitat in the wet season. So generally, there is potential in transferring models between geographically disjunct regions, but models are likely to transfer better when the environmental conditions are somehow similar between the training area and the transfer area. Next, we checked the temporal dynamics of fly. This was only done for Shimba Hills, and one of the things with fly number is that they decrease as you move away from the park. And to understand better what were the drivers of these patterns that we are seeing, we separated the traps into two groups and fitted temporal GLM models separately. So for the traps that were within a kilometer of the reserve, the temporal varying variables such as NDVI and precipitation, they didn't matter that much, and mostly the distance to the park was the one that explained the variability in Cessna number seen. For the traps that were beyond a kilometer of the reserve boundary, NDVI and precipitation explained the temporal variability that was seen, where Cessna numbers increased after a month of increased rainfall, but if rainfall persisted for more than a month, the numbers started to decline. For these localities, we also found that the ISCTRC numbers were only found in high vegetated areas. That is areas with more than 0.7 NDVI values, and this means that for these localities, control measure can be targeted after a month of increased rainfall, and only in areas that have high vegetation. However, we noted that the continuous system management is needed within 1 kilometer of the reserve, because here numbers are always high and there is no temporary variable that was explaining them. Lastly, to predict the spatial abundance, I would like to note that the main objective of this task was to explore to what extent can we produce spatial abundance when we have limited data. The purpose was not to produce accurate maps, but we used the data only from Kwale, Guruman, and Ruma National Park, and a series of environmental variables that are known to influence Sese flies from the study that we did and also from literature. And then we used the random forest, which is a machine learning model. And while random forest is capable of dealing with multicollinearity, if you include irrelevant variables, it's likely to reduce the model performance. So we also tested two different methods of feature elimination technique, which is the commonly used RFE, that is recursive feature elimination, and the VSAF. So each method has different algorithms, how they retain the variables. But what we can see from here, despite the set of the data set retained, precipitation, tree cover percentage, and soil moisture were the top three predictor variable explaining spatial variation in Sese abundance. And Sese declined with increase in soil and precipitation, soil moisture and precipitation, but increased with increase in tree cover. So for both data sets, the accuracy we are in, that's the cross validation R-squared value, was about 0.67, meaning that for the training area, the models the predictor variables used could explain at least 70% of the variability seen, which is a good model. However, when we extrapolated results to the whole of Kenya, the results were completely different for the two set of variables. We see that for the RFE, it behaved in a very common way for random forest and extrapolation beyond the training area. That is, as you moved further from where the training data is, the models performed poorly. But for the visa model, while the prediction may not be accurate, I would say to some extent, and some of the experts from Kenya may agree that it aligns to some extent with the known distribution of fly in Kenya. But as I said, our aim was not really to produce accurate map, but rather towards kind of objective to assess to what extent can we be able to predict spatial abundance with limited geographic data. While these maps may not be accurate to orient control, they can be used maybe to guide where more sampling needs to be conducted for the basis of validating the maps. We conclude that there are opportunities exist to update existing SESE distribution map and develop a reliable SESE abundance map. However, how satellite-based predictors are incorporated into the predictive modeling is key into achieving reliable prediction. In the event there is no ground data, there is potential for transferring SESE habitats models between geographically separated regions, but care also needs to be taken. And finally, when extrapolating prediction in large scales, additional SESE sampling is probably needed. I would like to thank direct donors that have enhanced this study, as well as the CIP co-donors. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Maintenant, on aborde la dernière communication par Kiragu.
Jeffert was one of the technicians who worked.
L'un des techniciens qui a.
The GOO trap was developed. Jeffert.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks, Regida, for that introduction. My name is Jafet Kiragu.
Alors, ma communication porte sur le préjudice.
NG2G traps in Kindepo Valley National Park of Uganda. Kiragu, I belong to Machakos University as at the moment. And my two colleagues is Dr. Mutinda, who works for the Kenya Wildlife Service, a pretty well-seasoned wildlife epidemiologist, and Robert Ndegeka, who works for UCF in Murchison Falls National Park. The case of human trypanosomiasis and livestock trypanosomiasis is all very familiar ground, and I want to get interested in wildlife trypanosomiasis. We've had a few papers in this conference which are pointing in that direction, and we think that wildlife trypanosomiasis may also be an important consideration to add to AAT as part of T together with HAT. Now, why WorldDrive may be so important to consider their trypanosomiasis bit of it is from two facets. One, in that WorldDrive serve as reservoir hosts for both trypanosomiasis that causes sleeping sickness and also for the animal bait. Then, in themselves, some of species of WorldDrive are susceptible to the disease, and moreover, they are in national parks like Kindepo Valley National Park and for various other parks in Africa. They serve as conservation. They are in conservation areas which serve as sources of sese to reinfest reclaimed areas or to infest new ground. Some of the WorldDrive may be the bucks, which are attractive to sese, in addition to the trypanosusceptible WorldDrive. This study, or the study in Uganda, primarily aimed at assisting the Ugandan government enhance their conservation efforts, and this is was a small part of that big study. The bit aimed at quantifying the extent to which trypanosomiasis in WorldDrive in Kindepo could be a constraint, and what I mean, not deal with the entire business of WorldDrive trypanosomiasis here, but I'm only going to zero in on some interesting finding of what we found from trap catches. Kindepo Valley National Park, of course, is to the northeast of Uganda, very close to our Kenyan border, as well as South Sudan corner. And the valley is what I'm showing, the national park is what I'm showing in the right, and we are only interested in what I would call the southeastern part of KVNDP. The whole national park comprises the Narus Valley to the southwest and the Kindepo Valley to the northeast. So the results which I'm presenting are of work done in the wetter part of Kindepo Valley National Park, which is also pretty wet for a good part of the year. Vegetation is very lush, and therefore sese habitat may not vary a lot because it is very green throughout the year, and hosts for the sese flies are antlipe again throughout the year. This is not very interesting for this paper, but to show just the trap distribution in the valley. We used the NG2G trap, which people have been referring here as the Ngu trap, but much more better referred to as the NG2G trap. The reason is because there are various variants of the Ngu trap, and the results from the densities from all those 20 positions which were used were about 87 flies per trap per day, and I'm contrasting this with previous studies in the same environment, previous studies by Egelu et al. Of 2020, also reported by Enviro and the Uganda Wildlife Authority of the same, working in the same area where only 5 flies per trap per day is recorded. I have given you a few characteristics of the area to imply that cessation densities may not necessarily vary so much in the same place as much as those studies were done at different times. This in the previous studies in 2020 and what I'm calling the present study, which are the results obtained in July of last year. So this was exciting for us, and we think that surely the differences in the trap types between the biconical, which was used previously, and the current NG2G trap must have contributed to the differences observed. Ladies and gentlemen, this is very low data of the first column is of trap catches in the 20 positions which were used, and the number of total males and females which were recorded in each of the trap. And if you look at the last one, is the one which is indicating a lot of sampling bias. Sampling bias in the sense that I've worked out the percentage of females which were caught in those, in each of the 20 traps. The range is from 44 at trap position number 12, and the highest was position number 20, which earned 87% of those flies being females. The range of those figures again, which I've just given you, is from 45 to 87% of that catch being females, and with a mean of 77%. We want to indicate that there was nothing, all the technicians who worked there did not make any mistake. I was part of the team. I was there on the ground doing the sase catches throughout, and therefore the possibility of doing the things wrongly were slim. So to say is that we are recording, well, we record very high percentages of catches of females. Surely 77% is not small, as much as I'm aware, of course, that the difference, I mean, the catches in the sassaflies and the sexes are not necessarily 50-50. This could be due to differences in the attraction of the flies, of the sexes to the traps, then the trap entry responses of both sexes in the NG2G trap specifically, and there could be also differences in the physiological status of the flies, those that get to the traps, especially the nutritional status. We think that there could be important findings of this observation, and this is what I'm presenting. This could be because we are saying that it's largely, the trap catches are largely of the females. In these traps, remember, I'm talking about the NG2G traps. This could be important if we were interested in doing field collections of flies, for example, to initiate laboratory colonies, then catches of females here become much more desirable. Of course, other ecological standards, and I'm also not forgetting that if we were to use these results and this particular trap, therefore, for removal trapping of Glossina moscetans as a means of control, then this will be very good, because what we'll be doing is increasing the mortality of female sese. If we were to hit that female population much harder for the entire, we would achieve the results much faster than if we had reduced impact on the males increased impact on females will bring, of course, the population of flies much faster. This study was, I would not want to reiterate and say that it was carried out in a hurry, but I want to say that we used the NG2G trap here because it is cheap, it was easily available, and we could assemble it pretty fast. Now, it was developed in Kenya. Dr. Saini has just indicated for the Mositans group of SESE, and specifically for G. parindipes, where it was tried, tested and tried and found pretty efficient in Kenya for G. parindipes. Glossina mositans is a mositans group SESE, and we thought that initially it was applicable. But we did not do any trap comparison standards on it prior to this study. We also didn't know how efficient it was going to be, but interestingly, there we were in the very fascinating results that I've presented. We also think that we should look at the trap entry behavior of these flies once they are attracted and they are within the vicinity of the trap. Could it be that we've recorded all those very many flies, all those very many females, when the males were also there and did not get in? These are questions which we still need answers. Very, very briefly, I'm putting forward to us that patent NG2G traps may be an appropriate trap for both sampling, because all ecological studies on flies will rely on sampling, and also in control, because we need to bring down fly populations. And this, I'm saying, it could be an indicator. However, I have pointed the other areas which we need also to investigate what is happening. You may have noted that I have coded Glossina mositans, and previous authorities working the same area have put the species to be Glossina mositans. However, they have gone ahead to explain that it is the continuous belt with the Kenyan Sesame belt in that area. But then we know that in Kenya, what we have around that area is Glossina mositans submositans. And therefore, also, we need to find out, or to be very sure, are we talking about then Glossina mositans or Glossina mositans submositans? Otherwise, that's why I thought it was a bit more safer to just talk about it as Glossina mositans. Otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, I've indicated that this study was just part of another very big study. It was part of a big study to understand to understand wound-derived trypanosomiasis in the area and how we can use this to enhance conservation of both the environment as well as the wound-derived. It was funded by the Northern Rangeland Trust, NRT of Kenya, the Uganda Wound-derived Authority, and the Uganda Conservation Front. And more importantly also, I wish to acknowledge the assistance of the staff from the Uganda Wound-derived Authority as well as UCF, who assisted us a lot in the Kindepo Valley National Park. Other listening to me.
Thank you so much, Jeffet. Ladies and gentlemen, we are running behind schedule. So we are going to take only 4 questions. And after that, we have a general discussion on the issues we raised yesterday before we closed. So 4 questions, please. Yes, please. Please make them very brief and directed questions, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, pour la parole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the floor. I have a concern on the class and the distribution of CC in Africa, which was presented by Yano. I'm called Alan from DRC. I thank the whole team because it's a big piece of work which was done, which is a very good thing for Africa. But there's regarding DRC, there's a big gap, which actually, according to me, raise some questions. Is it because we don't have data, or the data are not coming? That's not what is of interest to me now, but what interests me is that we should finalize this atlas because we need it. And at some moment, we have to superimpose HAT and the distribution of Glossina so as to move towards elimination. I have also another concern. At the level of the FAO, are there actions which have been planned to help fulfill this gap so as to finish this important atlas? Thank you. Ensuite, là. Thank you. I'm called Wilfried from the DRC. My question is for Moise of Guinea concerning crossed traps in terms of the resistance. This effectiveness, would it be due to the fact that in looking at the photos, the crossed traps, these are two reduced traps which are crossed. Does it mean that one crossed traps is actually equal to two reduced traps? Secondly, the effectiveness of crossed traps, wouldn't it be due to the durability? Wouldn't it be due to the fact that these nets are crossed and therefore it increases their robustness? Thank you. Thank you. I'm called Florent. My question is directed to Moise for his good presentation. I would like to ask, you have taken the example of Bakade. Would it possible with the teeny target use the floating model of teeny target in small water bodies where even the crossed traps may be used, using small boats with light materials which can start to move around the water body, the pond? Has this ever been tried in the past?
Ok, merci monsieur le modérateur. Je me joins aux autres pour m'adresser aussi à Moïse. Je tiens d'abord à le féliciter pour sa présentation et féliciter aussi la Guinée pour son...
Their experience. My question is to know, I see some screens which are put together and also the traps. So the traps, you talk about catching flies, and the tiny targets are also indicated for vector control. So have they put there for actually catching flies or not? Encore une autre question. called Dr. Diaby, National Tribunal Service Plan. I have a question for Dr. Kona. In 2011, I had a great pleasure to visit the Bubu sector, and he had talked about the traps and screens. For my personal information, I wanted to know the contribution of those to the anti-vector control. Thank you. Merci.
One burning question here and one in the end. So only two more, please.
Okay, merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much. My question is for Moise. For the evaluation of the effectiveness of the crossed screens, did you cover the screens with some adhesive? Because if a fly stops on the screen, how can it be retained?
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le modérateur. C'est Piana Patti.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. I'm from the DRC. Me, I'm so worried because I observed the participation of FAO and other organizations to see. I see a whole concerning the contribution of Glossina in the DRC. I'm asking the question, what is happening? Patek visited the DRC 2 times. Dr. Caballo visited the DRC. I don't know if they gave some support for the DRC so that we may be able to do this work, yes or no. And I'm also asking that there should be a small meeting with FAO, with FAO, to see what can be done. Otherwise, it is so worrying. Thank you. Merci. Merci. Commençons avec...
Two questions directed to you, both from DRC, and why FAO is not working with them to make a good atlas there.
Merci. En effet, je m'excuse.
Thank you. I'm sorry if the presentations actually worried the colleagues of the DRC. That wasn't the intention. You have to read well this map. The map is based on all scientific publications from 1910 to 2010. If we have forgotten some publications, we actually request you to inform us, and we should certainly include the data to the atlas. But if there's a void, an emptiness, it's because very few data have been published in scientific journals. That said, there can be non-published data. Now for the mapping of non-published data, that can be used for national authorities who are fighting animal and human trypanosomiasis. They have to be engaged in the development of national atlas, where they can put in all the non-published data. Third point, are there FAO activities to fill in the gap? I think we first have to identify well the shortfalls. That's why our priority before making field investigations, we have to ensure that all countries have their national atlases with all the existing data. If all the existing data are in a database, it's at that moment that we could say that here there's nothing, so we need to do some investigations. And here there were already some data. Perhaps it's not a priority to do an investigation there. Now for FAO, we have limited resources, but in 13 African countries, we have succeeded in mobilizing resources for doing the two things at the same time. Do field invitations to fill in the gap. I will continue with the conversation with the colleague from DRC afterwards. Thank you. Thank you, Julian. Alors,
Directed to the Guinea presentation. Why did you try the tiny targets there, and how does this cross screens work? So the floor is yours. You can answer all of them in one go.
Je vais juste.
Question. I'm going to be brief. This is a very good question. I'm going to start with the question where we talk about the number and the effectiveness. First of all, we didn't use the same number. We used 22 crossed screens. We can say yes, it's because of that the screens seem to be very effective. First of all, its triangular form. Its crossed forms gives the effectiveness because it is put on a dish, which makes it possible to do a rotation. With the reduced screen, it is fixed and attached on something and very fixed. So it gives functionality of the two sides only. You can see that what that can really give. For Bo's question, who was asking if we have thought of putting a floating screen. First of all, we worked in mangrove conditions where there's the idea of the swamps. In the ponds, it will be possible by putting the crossed screens so as that will replace the floating screen, because if it is rotating, it adapts itself better in those conditions. Whereas on the pond, there's the air current and the water current does not affect it because it is fixed. The question asking the functionality of the trap and the screen. For us, we use the trap as a control. It was compared between the two screens, the reduced screen and the crossed screens. And why didn't we put the adhesive? Because we are not comparing with the trap, we are comparing between the screens. And for the it has been shown by Jean-Baptiste that the adhesive trap is more effective because there could be some flies which fly around without entering. So the two tools which we used for comparison were the adhesive one and the non-adhesive. Perhaps other people may add supplementary information to what I've said. I think Moise has been explicit, but what we should observe is that we reflected on the fight in this zone, which is a bit wild and complex. So we observed the loss of our programs in terms of the screens which we were using before. In less than 6 months, half of the screens were lost. So Moise and the colleagues thought of putting the crossed screens. This is a mobile screen. When you talk about Glossina, the method of capturing of the flies is based on the movement. So these crossed screens have more of attraction by color, and also the movement, which also attracts the fly, which increases the effectiveness of this. There's one who talked about putting adhesive on the on the on the on the tool. So Moise put some adhesive on the traps so as to calculate the apparent density by tool for each tool. For regarding bow, I can say that it is possible, it's doable. If you have some water zones, you can effectively use this crossed screens on floating objects. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Est-ce que nous pouvons...
Issue which I raised yesterday, why are the African countries not undertaking sustainable vector and trypanosomiasis control? We can have, it can be very brief, Dr. Caballo, and then Dr. Babacha, please.
Thank you, Buena Moderator. You posed a very interesting question, and I think it is a fitting conclusion to our discussion this week. HAT and AAT have always been handled differently. And I believe there are three types of interventions on TNT. If you think about it, there is the actual vector control, there is the treatment operations, and then the research and R&D, research and development. Now, actual vector control is a public good. It's understandably so. It can only be handled by governments because the private people will not be involved in actual control because obviously tsetse flies are all over the place and you cannot control your farm and others and so on. So it's understandably a public good. Whereas treatment, or whether it is chemotherapy or immunology, can be easily privatized because they translate into actual drugs that are used and can be bought and applied individually. So it's understandable how HAT and AAT would be handled differently. One, vector control will not be handled by individual people, but treatments and so on will be handled by. Now, the other factor has been, I think WHO has been very effective in leading and coordinating the interventions on HAT. Whereas, as we have pointed out before, the African Union Commission has been slack in their role in coordinating the interventions on vector control, which as PATEC. Because PATEC had taken off and it was clear they had that niche, and they were leading countries to put projects together and so on. But now they went slack, so right now it doesn't look like there is any actual vector control activity going on. But in the history of vector control, all vector control activities have always been handled by the government. Now, what is required, I believe, is to projectize TNT, make it into actual projects with a beginning and an end, filling time and space and resources available. In other words, you define an area from which you remove the tsetse flies and with given resources, define the resources and so on, but translate all activities into actual flies being killed every day on a daily basis. If you go to the government today, many governments have safety control departments, but they are not actually achieving any actual safety control work. They are doing surveys, fine, and all those types of activities. They are employing staff. There are lots of staff being paid in the name of safety control, but there's no actual safety control activity going on. What is needed is to projectize their activities and deal with them as individual projects, each with a beginning and an end, for purpose of accountability and for purpose of ensuring that you know where you've started and where you've ended. So to answer your question, your guiding question, safety control has to be addressed as a public concern and with the government leading. And the best way to handle it is in the form of actual projects that can be defined and implemented as such. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Caballo. I think some new thinking is also needed to add to what Dr. Caballo is saying. Professor Bacha, if he can make the last comment, I don't think we can continue with this much longer because
thank you.
They want to pick up the tea. So if we don't rush that.
Leader,
Yes,
thank
please.
you, Dr. Saini, and I don't think I need to add much from more than what John has said. Because listening to ourselves from the country presentation, what's happening in the countries, to the presentation around the Gorosaina biology control, you get a feeling of us working without a common vision. You get a feeling that we have fragmented very important activities, but we are not joining this, as John is saying. So going forward, I think the solution is for us to people working around, people working around AAT especially, to have a program, a strategy that links all these pieces together, that causes coordination, harmonization, so that we can make progress as far as AAT is concerned. So I'm just reiterating what John has said, the need to join these fragmented pieces into one whole in form of a strategy and a program for the continent. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think I hand over back to our chairman because this will take some more time to discuss. Chairman, please.
Thank you very much. Please join me in giving a very heavy round of applause to the moderator and the rapporteur. Great session, excellent presentations, very stimulating. There are questions that we need to answer. We have time limitations. I also had a bunch of questions for some of the presentations, but we can take them as we go for coffee and tea, because if we don't, they have said they are going to take it away in preparation for lunch. So what we shall do, in the interest of managing time, right now it is 11:33. We want to give ourselves only 20 minutes. Please, from here, go straight, take your tea, and let us come back so that 10 minutes before noon, we can start the next very exciting session on community participation. Thank you and enjoy your tea.